You know, according to a Marist poll conducted last month, voter disapproval of both the president and the Republican Congress he was speaking to is at an all-time high. Will any of the president's announcements tonight be enough to turn the popularity of the president around, or will it change the way people view Washington in general? Joining me now to talk about that is Professor Lee Miringoff, director of the Marist Institute for Public Opinion, and a guy who's done some polling for the Wall Street Journal in the last couple of years. Lee, good to have you here.
My pleasure, Jerry.
So what do you think? The president, as I said earlier this evening, seemed to enter the evening with Americans being cool toward him as a leader, but kind of warm toward his agenda. Did he manage to turn some of those warm feelings about things like, say, a minimum wage increase into warmer feelings about his leadership?
I think he certainly tried. I think it was very well crafted in terms of trying to make him a little more personable. He doesn't come over as a warm and fuzzy guy usually, and I think he was trying a little more humor, a few shout outs across the aisle to Boehner and Rubio, and even Mitt Romney got a mention. So I think he was making an attempt to be a little more bipartisan, at least in tone. Yet he was also establishing a pathway for Democrats in 2014. The whole counterattack on Obamacare, which he launched tonight, very clearly a message for Democrats to rally for the midterm elections. So I think he was trying to do lots of things. I think it was pretty well crafted. I don't think it resets Americans' views of him exactly, but it certainly gets him positioned and his party better positioned than perhaps earlier before the speech.
Yeah, Lee, you mentioned Obamacare just there. I thought that was interesting. He did offer a pretty full-throated defense of the Affordable Care Act, and I thought was offering up some lines of argument for Democrats to use in 2014 when clearly Republicans will want to talk about, first and foremost, Obamacare.
Yeah, I think for one of the few times he was pretty clear about it and in terms of what it accomplished, and obviously in terms of some of the folks. And look, they do a lot of polling on these things, and obviously the notion of repealing Obamacare is not popular anymore to the degree that it ever was. So he understood that, and he sort of worked that in. I mean, I think it was very well crafted. Does it reset his administration and his presidency after the toughest year he's had? Probably not, but at least it gave his fellow Democrats, a pathway for their own campaigns coming up to what will be obviously an intense election season not too far down the road.
Well, and as you suggest, your polling indicates that Americans, whether they're unhappy with Obamacare or not, are not really enthused about the idea of repealing it and starting over. So is this an issue Democrats can either work beyond or work around or get through this year the way it looks in January of the beginning of a midterm election year?
But they have no choice. I mean, that's sort of the staple of what the Obama administration's been about. And a lot of folks on his side of the aisle voted for it. And they're going to run with it. And he was trying to arm them a little bit. It was, as you said, a clear-throated counterattack that he launched today. And I think also with women and students and on immigration, I think these were all things he was trying to do, while he was also trying not to be too harsh on, the pre-speech buzz about how he was going to, say my way or the highway in terms of Congress. I think he was a little softer on that. He cushioned that a little bit by some of the shout outs across to the Republicans. So he wasn't, harsh in a partisan way. I thought politically he was very, very much in touch with where public opinion is in terms of some of his proposals. Whether he's it's a modest night for him. I mean, he didn't really run a lot of fiery speeches at the American people or at Congress like he did, let's say, this time last year.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a modest year in general, but one of the things that's pretty clear in public polling, yours and others, is that Americans are pretty fed up with Washington. And I wonder if a president who says, I'm going to work around Congress if necessary to get something done, isn't striking a chord by saying that, even if it makes the opposition party kind of mad.
Yeah, I think exactly. And I think they know that, and they're going to try to move ahead. And he is sort of saying, this is part of the bully pulpit, and he's trying to use that. Of course, he's open to the argument, why now, why not? If these are so urgent, these issues, why not earlier? Why didn't he try to do these things before? And that's probably a tough argument for him to respond to. But clearly, he is where he is now on this. And this year was, a lost time for him in terms of what he said this time last year and what ended up occurring, ending with the failed launch of Obamacare. really was a problematic for him. It shows in the numbers. But then on the other hand, Congress is at an all-time low also. And I think everybody sort of in that room understood that, both Democrats and Republicans. So we are seeing, the budget passage right before the end of the year, the agricultural bill. I think, maybe immigration is next in terms of what people are going to try to put together. Everybody wants to have a little something to take back to their constituents for next November. So maybe we will see just a little more of a bipartisan tone. We saw it in the GOP response tonight also. Wasn't the flaming rhetoric that we've had back and forth between both sides.
And if you're just talking about public opinion, minimum wage, is that clearly something that a majority has swung behind, an increase in the minimum wage?
Well, almost everything President Obama talked about in terms of the NBC Wall Street Journal poll, I guess they did read it or did their own polling, because they sure found, minimum wage, immigration, manufacturing, energy, climate. It was all right in there in terms of things that, as you said in the beginning, the policies were okay, but his favorability, his warmth factor has really eroded. People are getting a little tired here of him, and I think he was trying to be in more of a campaign mode in terms of his personal touch today. All the folks who were with him that he mentioned, including obviously the very moving tribute at the end to the injured military man, Rensburg. So, I think that that he was trying to be sensitive to the fact that in political terms and polling terms, his favorability numbers have descended along with his approval rating, and he needed to restore something to start back on the road to being more effective leader for his party as they go out, or they're going to have bigger problems in the next Congress if they lose the Senate majority, for example.
Lee Miringoff, thanks a lot for joining us tonight. I appreciate your thoughts.
Yeah, my pleasure, Jerry.